It's great to welcome for the first time to the show today Congressman Dan Goldman, representing the 10th District of New York. That includes Lower Manhattan. It includes parts of Western Brooklyn as well. Great to have you, Congressman. Appreciate it.
Great to be with you, David.
So, just to start with something topical, I'm curious the behind the scenes of this floating of the prospect of a third term for Donald Trump. I'm hearing from folks who say, ignore this and don't even talk about it. It's a deliberate distraction. I'm hearing from folks who say, it might be good to hear from someone who's actually on Capitol Hill, whether this is being taken seriously by you and your colleagues. Is this anything?
Well, I think it is a scary a scary suggestion that, in my mind, actually is very much related to other authoritarian actions and anti-democratic actions that Donald Trump has taken.
Mm.
So, yes, it's being taken seriously by some. A congressman from Tennessee has introduced a constitutional amendment to allow Donald Trump to have a third term. I would just note that is, of course, a admission that it would require changing the Constitution for him to serve a third term.
Right.
But to me, it is, I think, part of him paving his way toward becoming a Putin-esque dictator. And we've seen any number of actions to this point along those lines. He pardoned all the January 6th violent criminals who stormed the Capitol in support of him. He has fired prosecutors and law enforcement agents who investigated and prosecuted him. He has fired almost all of the inspectors general in the executive branch agencies. He has put his own partisan political lackeys at the head of those agencies. And he has essentially cowed Congress into giving him all of their power. And now he's going after the judiciary. And so this is all part and parcel of his effort to take down our democracy. And I think a third term is kind of the culmination of that effort, that he is socializing and he is paving the way. On the other hand, it's quite far down the road. There won't be a constitutional amendment. And it's very speculative at this point. And so to some extent, yes, it's a distraction from all of the other devastating actions that he is actually taking right now. But I think we can walk and chew gum at the same time. And I think it's important to call this out as part of his effort to take down our democracy. And as the other parts of that effort are propelling him or compelling him to cut all sorts of government programs, to implement wild tariffs, to undo birthright citizenship, to get rid of the Department of Education. It's all part and parcel of the same effort to simply take over our government.
In terms of what is being done, everybody's favorite press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, yesterday declared that the investigation into Signalgate has been completed. They found no wrongdoing. You'll be pleased to hear, I'm sure. And yet at the same time, we're hearing from the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, you'd better be careful. If you get anywhere near a Tesla showroom, you would better be careful. And even your colleague, Jasmine Crockett, should be careful based on what she says. What do you make of the DOJ's willingness to go after the people protesting Tesla while simultaneously just sort of brushing off the idea that there's anything to look at seriously with what happened with Signal last week?
Yeah, well, look, people who destroy property should be prosecuted. What is preposterous is to create a task force within the FBI to investigate those who are targeting Tesla cars for destruction, and to claim that they're domestic terrorists when they will not even acknowledge that the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers, all of those who rioted and invaded the Capitol are domestic terrorists. But the broader point is Pam Bondi has already admitted, essentially, or has acted as if she lied under oath. She very clearly said that she will not politicize the Department of Justice. Under all sorts of precedent, Republican precedent especially, this Signalgate absolutely must and would be investigated by a special counsel, just like Biden's possession of classified documents was investigated by a special counsel, just like Trump's possession of classified documents, just like Hillary Clinton's emails were investigated by the FBI. At a minimum, you have to investigate this. But to claim that there is nothing in disclosing clearly classified information on an unsecured signal chat going to a journalist, and of course it could have been anybody, that doesn't warrant investigation. And not surprisingly, and I was a former prosecutor, David, I never met a defendant. I never charged a defendant who committed a crime for the very first time. When you get caught, it's not the first time. And now it's coming out that Mike Waltz had created a lot of other signal chats. And of course, he had, and that's got to be part of the investigation. Are there other instances? So the fact that she refuses to do it is so clearly partisan. It is so clearly consistent with Donald Trump's stated efforts to use the Department of Justice and his pardon power to help his allies get out of jail and to harm his adversaries and to prosecute and target them.
One of the reasons I've asserted Democrats did not do well in November was being unable to effectively communicate on some issues with the American people. After the November election, I was invited to meet with some top Biden advisors and even the former president himself. This was December. And I got the impression from the questions they were asking that they realized that there was something that didn't work quite right. I'm wondering your view from the inside as to whether you think there is a path or a plan here to improve that since Donald Trump has taken office. And I'll sort of kind of caveat or fill this in with, when I interview folks like you, your colleagues over on the Senate side, et cetera, I hear from my audience some version of, these seem like smart, capable, well-intentioned people. It's just not cool right now to be a Democrat. There's just something that's missing in terms of what exactly is being offered. And I want to hear a little bit from you about how you and your colleagues are thinking about this behind the scenes. Because from what I hear from my audience, there's a lot of left-leaning folks who are very displeased with the Democratic Party right now.
Yeah, and I understand it. Well, I think what we failed to do was relate to the American people where they were. And I'll give you a good example, and I take responsibility for this. As a former prosecutor and as the lead counsel in the impeachment of Donald Trump for the first time, my area of sort of focus and expertise is rule of law, separation of powers, democracy, constitutional law. And when I saw Project 2025, I was petrified because it was so clearly the playbook for a Donald Trump presidency. For better or worse, probably worse, I feel like I know Donald Trump very well. And there was no doubt in my mind that this was exactly the agenda that he was going to implement. He paid lip service to knowing nothing about it. Of course, that was bullshit. But I talked a lot about Project 2025. I'll take responsibility, just talk about myself. What I failed to do in retrospect was connect Project 2025 to everyday lives of the American people. How is Donald Trump's efforts to undermine the rule of law, to take down our democracy, to politicize the government and weaponize the Department of Justice, and to cut all sorts of programs, how is Project 2025 going to affect you, the American people? And I think that where our policies, very broadly and very consistently, are much, much better for the American people. And what we have to do a better job is explaining that people are being lied to and gaslit by Donald Trump and the Republicans, and that what we stand for is making sure that every American gets that access to pursue the American dream. That is, at its core, what the Democratic Party wants to do. We want to make sure that we have equal opportunity not equal outcomes, equal opportunity for people to succeed and to pursue the American dream. That is what makes this country so special. Is there's not a class system that anybody can, make a website in their college dorm room and become the biggest company in the world. That innovation and growth and opportunity is what makes this country special. And that what we are trying to do is make sure that people can eat, make sure that people can have health care, can have child care, can have the basic necessities of life so that they can not only get by, but they can get ahead. That is the fundamental principle of the Democratic Party. And that is very different from the Republican Party, which don't pay attention to their words, pay attention to their actions. And what they are doing are cutting all of those services and programs for the vast, vast majority of the American people in order to cut taxes on Elon Musk and other billionaires and to sort of pay back their benefactors who helped Donald Trump win the election.
I want to dig into the taxes aspect a little bit because it's now being reported. You just never know where this will all shake out, but it's being reported that the Trump administration and Republicans may allow that top tax rate to go from 37 back to the 39.6 in exchange for being able to get through a bunch of other stuff that we still don't exactly know. But the idea is it was assumed there's no way that top tax rate is going back up to 39.6. Maybe it will. Do you see that? First of all, do you even buy that that's a possibility? But secondly, do you think that that's a cynical attempt to get something else through that's even worse for the average American? Or what would be behind that move?
Well, look, people have criticized our party a lot, and I think justifiably. But I want to take a moment to claim at least some progress on this very issue.
Okay.
The reason why they are floating this is that our messaging that they are cutting Medicaid, that they are cutting the Department of Education, they are cutting healthcare, they are cutting federal employees. And in order to pave the way for tax cuts on the super wealthy and the billionaires has broken through.
Mm.
They know that politically, that is a loser for them. And so they are scrambling to figure out a way to blunt that argument, which has resonated with the American people. And so now they're chasing different ways where they can, where they can undermine that very clear, concise argument that we have consistently been making, certainly since, in the past month and a half. And so, yes, it's not always as sexy as a subpoena to Elon Musk or introducing legislation on the floor that would stop Elon Musk from just indiscriminately cutting all government services and programs that he just doesn't like. We don't have the power to do that, unfortunately, in the minority. So we are using other means to make a difference and to fight back. They are not as sexy. I grant you that. And they take some time and they take some effort. And frankly, they are much more effective when we in Congress here are unified with the American people in fighting together and in amplifying what is really going on. Because Donald Trump and the Republicans will lie and gaslight until the cows come home. Everything they say is a lie. And what we need to do and are trying to do is to actually tell the truth so that the American people understand it. And we have the facts to back it up. And our job, which we are trying to do, is to lift that message up, make sure Americans understand that they're coming after your food benefits, they're coming after Medicaid, they're coming after Social Security, they are coming after the most central and critical programs that our government provides. And they are doing it not because they want to reduce the deficit, but they are doing it because they want to cut taxes on big corporations and the wealthy. And this discussion, and you're right, who knows whether it'll happen, this discussion is a result of our effective messaging that they realize is politically just unpalatable.
Congressman, last thing I want to ask you about. I don't believe that the left is as eager to have a single leader in the way that the right seems happy to have one leader, which right now is Donald Trump. So the question is a little different, I think, on the left than it is on the right. But that being said, who do you see right now as we get closer to 26 and then in kind of the more distant future, we're talking about 2028? Who seem to be the rising leaders of the Democratic Party, if any?
I think the very clear emerging leader is Hakeem Jeffries, and we
Hmm.
have to recognize that um, that Leader Jeffries is just in his second term of being the Democratic leader. He is emerging as a strong leader. He is a fabulous strategic thinker, messenger. He's a great leader to those of us who are here with him. And I think that as we start moving forward, he will assert himself more and more to be the voice of the Democratic Party. And I think that that is the what I hope and expect to happen. And I think he'll be absolutely outstanding at doing that.
I have had him on the show. My counterpoint is he has 35% approval per Gallup. Now, I will say that there's a lot of, I haven't heard of Hakeem Jeffries in that 100%, right? To get up to 100, it's not just 35, 65. There's a lot of, I'm not familiar with this person. But it's interesting that you're mentioning him and some others have as well, when there seems to be an approval problem. But I also wonder whether that's, listen, when you lose everything in November and you start polling people in March, April, the numbers are never that great. I don't know. I think it's an open question for me.
Well, look, I mean, we have to be realistic here. The Democratic Party's approval numbers are as low as they've ever been.
Yeah.
They're lower than 35% in some polls. So it's a party problem that we are aware of. And I think that I'm not worried about Hakeem's approval rating. The more that he gets out there and the more he asserts his leadership, the more that the American people will come to recognize what a terrific representative he is for the American people.
All right. I know I will hear from my audience as to whether they agree with you. Congressman Dan Goldman, really appreciate your time and great having you on.
Thanks so much for having me, David.